Hi, thanks everyone for tuning in. I think I'm doing a video after 2 or 2.5 months due to crazy times. I mean, everyone knows we're not going to talk about the astrology of coronavirus, so don't worry about it. So I think you already have so much of information about it, especially astrological information. But I'm joined by my dear friend Tara Aal today, and it makes it worthwhile a wait for 2.5 months of not doing a video because um, this is the promo video of our book, the first book. I think it's the first book for both of us, and I and Tara wrote it together, and we are almost close to publishing the book. And I think we are this close to publishing the book, and it might be out any time from now. So thank you, Tara. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I think this is our video.
Yeah. Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Super excited about the book. It's definitely difficult, challenging times. And I know you and I have been talking about how this book has been one of our most joyful things to keep working on during some really difficult times. So we're thankful for it. I think more than ever. We didn't know how this timing would turn out.
Yeah.
But in that respect, it's been a blessing. So I'm just excited for us to talk about it today. Yeah, I mean, we're almost ready to publish it, but almost can turn into longer than you think it's going to. But we're optimistic that this is about ready to be born.
Yeah, we're not promising any dates at this point of time, but I think we are very close, and we might send out information about the release of the book anytime soon. So this is not just a promo video, but this is going to be the story of our collaboration and the story of the book writing process, and almost everything that brought about a confluence or culmination between you and me. Which basically is the book. So, and which is probably just the beginning and beginning of many more and lots to come in near or far future. So, but the thing is, I'm just perplexed as to where I have to start.
Tell them how we met, because that was
okay. Yeah, I think that's something that I told you. I mean, I didn't tell you, but I wrote in the introduction of the book, which I mean, even you didn't know before that. Like, I found you through Infinity Astrological magazine, which is a wonderful little magazine that gives out a lot of great information, and I had benefited from it for about one or 1.5 years through issue.com. And that's where I found your work. I think you majorly wrote about tarot, but still, I think I was really close with your idea of working with divination. So even though I don't do tarot, I have a specific thought process or perception about how divination works, and astrology is also a part of or a form of divination. So I completely fell in love with the approach you had towards the divination or the idea of divination. So I think I should thank Infinity Astrological magazine for that, and the publisher.
Smiljana, and she has been. I've been writing for her magazine for a number of years now, and she's become a very dear person to me, and so it's just wonderful that that's how we actually connected. Think of this whole book like and she's in Serbia, right? Mm-hmm. I'm in Los Angeles at the time. I mean, I've moved around, but United States I am, and you're in India. So, I mean, we're not even like anywhere close to each other, but yet we all end up on the same page. But yeah, you're right. Big thank you to Smiljana and to Infinity Astrological magazine.
Yeah, so I mean, good wishes to her and also to the magazine to flourish more, because I think it kind of ignited the spark in me to get in touch with you. But I didn't get in touch with you for almost a year since I started reading your work through the magazine. But somehow I got in touch with you. I'm not sure what made me kind of to get in touch with you, but still I got in touch with you, and I immediately asked out for a podcast that we recorded, which was the birth of almost everything, especially at least this particular book, uh, that I mean, which we have just almost completed. So, uh,
And you, I think you reached out to me. It was the summer of 2018.
oh,
So
okay.
like just for timeline wise, because you and I were just chatting about this. It's funny because I don't always, well, actually most of the time I don't plan things based on astrology. You do more of the predictive work, but
Yeah.
I don't just do that so much. I'm more of a, as my teacher Lauren L. Bandian would say, I'm more of an interior astrologer. I'm more getting into the inner part or the soul aspect or the more personal pieces of it. But that doesn't mean I don't use it in other ways as well. But so we recorded that podcast on August 12th, 2018, and we didn't plan it for any special reason on that date, except for that it probably worked out between the time between, Los Angeles and where you are in India. But it was actually a day after the Leo new moon solar eclipse. And so in that conversation, we of course start talking about the moon and the mind and these things. And it wasn't until we looked back later and I re-listened to the podcast where you mentioned, oh, how, exciting or interesting that we're recording this, right at the time of the eclipse. And I thought, oh, of course. And with it being a solar eclipse, that is definitely a time when things come into our awareness now. So, and it was kind of like a flash, right? I mean, from that point on, like that sort of was the light that has continued on throughout this thing.
And I think there is a very generic or probably a false notion in various parts of or various forms of astrology that solar eclipse might not necessarily be a very good one, but I think it kind of sparkled a new beginning to both of us. Not just in terms of book. I think book is something that came pretty late, but at least even from a friendship point of view, or the companionship is even more important, which kind of brings in a lot of things onto the table. So I think solar eclipse. I think we should also thank solar eclipse.
Yeah, yeah. And Leo,
yeah,
right?
and Leo, yeah. So. Yeah, I think from there, what happened from there, I just don't remember.
Oh my gosh. Well, that podcast, if anyone is interested, it's still on Celestial Vibes. You can still find it on podcast. It was the September 5th, 2018.
I think it's also there on iTunes or most platforms, podcast
so,
platforms.
So if you're curious to hear the beginning, that's where it was. So what happened after that? Well, we must have got excited enough because in my little notes, we started really talking about the moon and Mercury. That's really where it began because you had mentioned that in Vedic astrology that the moon is mind. And we started kind of just kicking around a lot of ideas about moon and mind, which led us to write an article, right? I think that was the next step. We just worked on, and it was a very long article.
Yes,
we really got into.
I mean, for an article, I think it was very long, but finally there is a lot more connecting stories to see how it turned out into a book and not just an article or just one article. So,
yeah.
So I think the article just didn't stop from there, and it led us to one more important thing where you invited me to join you to the EA Zoom meetings hosted by Linda Johnson, Olive Bean, and other wonderful people. I think we should mention and give a huge shout out to EA Zoom meetings, Linda Johnson, Olive Bean, and all those people who volunteer and speak for the EA Zoom meetings, because I think it's one of the most important platforms to learn and live evolutionary astrology. So that is one of those important platforms that we got to present what we had written. The moon Mercury, I think, bridging heart and mind. So that was the first experience. It was I don't exactly remember the date, sometime in August 2018, if I'm not wrong. But I surely remember that my internet connection was very poor that day. It never is poor. I mean, it never is poor. It's reasonably good, and I don't face a lot of internet connectivity issues. And that was my first EA Zoom meetings, and I had connectivity issue, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:45 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning, and I was completely frustrated that the first EA Zoom meetings is turning out to be a disaster, and thankfully it did not. So, but I think I missed my part towards the end, and you had to take over due to my
Well,
connectivity issue. Yeah, I just won't forget that.
this is an example of how the moon memory is so different in different people. I don't even remember having to take over. I remember that it went very well, and that people were, I think we had some volunteers. We definitely had some people who at least were sharing, had some comments at the end. And I remember one person specifically said, "I hope you don't stop here. I hope you guys do more." And
Yeah,
that was really encouraging. So it's with EA Zoom meetings. I mean, Linda and Olive and Wanda and everyone who's part of that community. I mean, I agree, and I'm huge gratitude for not just that platform in the community, but the individual people who really do what
yeah,
it takes to make it happen, but also all the volunteers and all the participants. Like, it
exactly.
is really, it is a really, it's a wonderful thing. You should, I wanted you to, I guess at this point we've talked a lot. We haven't really talked about the book a lot. And so one thing I just want to mention really quickly is one thing that we are looking at is the phases, the phases that are based on the solar lunar phases in respect to moon with each of the other planets. So when we were looking at Moon Mercury at this point in our EA Zoom meeting and in our article, we were looking at the relationship. For example, this is just one way you can use it, but in a birth chart, you can look and see what is the phasal relationship between your moon and your Mercury, which will give you an idea of how you're bridging your emotional and logical mind, if you will. So this was sort of the territory we were exploring. But will you share, because maybe even before we did the Zoom meeting, or maybe it was after, I don't know, we were all excited about our article, right? We thought, oh, we should get it published. But then, so
Yeah,
tell.
I think it was after the Zoom meeting, because that was when we had a lot of hopes about that idea and article, and by the time we both had kind of followed what happened in our own lives during the particular phases of Mercury and Moon that we have in our natal charts. And I also think I remember working with the progressed phases on in my chart. So one more thing that we have to establish here is that it's the way you work with your natal configuration, or secondary progressed configuration, or even the configurations based upon the transits. So you can apply this technique, the relationship of two planets, uh, especially the moon being the major thing here. It depends on how you want to use the idea of phases. So going back to it, I think that was when we got this huge confidence of uh, uh, you know um, bringing it to the next level. So I think that's when we thought about um, trying to get this published. So so I think I asked Frank Clifford, someone whom I deeply respect today. I think he holds a major position in encouraging me to do whatever I've been doing so far, and he has been. I've been sending him the copy of magazines since the first issue, and he has always responded with good, encouraging feedback. So that kind of keeps me going, and I'm deeply indebted to Frank Clifford for whatever encouragement he has given. And I just wanted to share this idea with him to see what he thought, and whether we can send this to the Mountain Astrologer, which is the topmost forum for astrological publishing, and we aim for that. Uh, Fortunately or unfortunately, they were not interested for the reasons that we don't know of. I mean, so many people get rejected to get published in the Mountain Astrologer. It's not. So I think the first experience was not so good, but just I think it turned out to be very good for us. Um, and later on, I sent the copy of this article, Mercury Moon article, to Ronnie Grishman who was the editor in chief for Dell Horoscope magazine. So she was very interested to read, and she asked me to send it over. But some kind of thought came to my mind, saying that we should hold the copyright, because once we give the article to the publisher, the copyright is with them, and once we sell the article, it's done from us. So we don't have any attachment with the article except for our names being mentioned um, along with the article. So I thought it was important for us to hold the copyright, because the idea of a book kind of came into my mind, and it just did not leave at all. So I just told this to you in an email, saying that maybe we should just wait for some time and see what takes over. We never know. But I don't think I even revealed the idea of the book at that particular point of time, but it was there in my mind. And soon after, so I just wrote back to Ronnie Grishman, apologizing that no, I have this idea in my mind, so I don't want to sell this. And she's a very wonderful and a down to earth woman. So I think she just gave us the blessings and love. So yeah, I had. At the end of the day, I'm deeply grateful to her as well. So, but soon after,
we're also at this point, we're very grateful that the Mountain Astrologer did not want to publish it, right?
Yeah, sure.
So there's not one step on this in this journey for us that we're not thankful for, and we're very mindful and heartfully aware of everybody along the way that's been supportive in whatever way that's happened, right?
Yeah, okay. Sure.
So this is about to lead us to India, right?
Yeah. So soon after, I think I should tell that as well. So I'll just take 1 or 2 minutes to explain that. Like, you told me that you had applied or you got an invitation from one of the astrological associations in India to present a lecture in New Delhi, and you said that I should also just apply to become a speaker. I just didn't give a second thought, and I immediately applied because I had the topic in my mind. So I was working with a specific thing at that particular point of time, and I just immediately sent, and I got a response saying that I can come over there to present within a week or something. So I don't want to.
And it's not close for you, right? So I mean, for people that don't know India, let them know where you are in relation to Delhi.
It's I live in Chennai, southern part of India, eastern coast of South India, and New Delhi is in the north, and it's about 2,700 kilometers from Chennai to Delhi. So Sri Lanka is closer to me than Delhi is. So Sri Lanka takes about 2 to 2.5 hours. Not even that, just 1 hour flight from Chennai. But Delhi takes 2.5 hours to 3 hours flight. So that's about it. So I just wanted to expand and explore this opportunity of meeting you, because I didn't have any other plan until that particular point of time. So I think the only motivation to come there was to get in touch with you, and whatever it may be. I think it's very difficult to explain, but I think those 3 days were one of those important days where I don't want to talk too much about the conference, but still, I think we had so much of conversations, and Darren was there, and my wife and son were there. So it was more of a family gathering, and we bonded together as a family, and not just you and me. So
it was very moon. It was
very moonish.
Moon.
Yeah, very moonish. So a lot of emotional connect was going on, and I think it's just from there everything started. And I think I just put this idea in your mind that I have something in my mind, but I don't want to tell you. You just finish off your travel in India, and then you go back safely, and then I'll get back in touch with you once you settle down. And we had a call on I'm not sure about again the date, but towards the end of March or early April, when we met again for a Zoom meeting, and then I told you that I had this idea of the book in my mind. So, and I don't think you could say a no to that. So,
No.
so yeah.
Yeah, and so that means that it's been almost a year since we started. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I think you reached US on 21st or 22nd of March, which closely aligns to
Is
this.
now.
Yeah, it's 21st of March today, and it closely aligns. So I think it all happens. So we I don't think we took a year to write, but we started quickly in May because you wanted to attend the Norvac and then get kickstarted with a book. But still, we had planned a lot of things. I think we also decided that we were going to self-publish so soon, even before beginning the book itself. But we had written a lot of notes and stuff about various things what we wanted to write, and I think we also spoke about the Venus stuff.
Yeah.
So we both began writing Venus before you attended the Norvac, and then once you came back from Norvac after a good amount of rest, I think we met again to talk about. I think we had shared Venus and Moon by then, the phases of Venus Moon by then, and then switched on to the next to talk about. I think we had meetings with each and every planet except for Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus. I mean, so we just met for 4 planets. So yeah, we didn't meet. So, but I think we were pretty much in line, focused, and we started thinking alike. And probably we did not need much of meeting and taking notes of what you want to write and what I want to write. So we just fell in place easily and beautifully. Like we did not need much of explanation from each other.
No, it was actually pretty amazing. There was I think a lot of it happened on the intuitive level.
Yeah.
You and I were talking earlier, and I just, for any astrology geeks out there, like our charts, I was right before we started recording this episode today. I mean, we talk in the book that Aswin has a moon with the tropical, working with the Western chart. Aswin has a moon Jupiter conjunction, and I have a moon Mars conjunction. And so we were laughing a bit and saying, well, of course, we're filled with all this fiery Mars energy. Both Jupiter and Mars are fiery planets. Like, they want to do something with it. And then we were looking further, and we both have Mercury Saturn conjunctions, and they oppose each other. So Aswin, you've got, your Mercury Saturn conjunction is in Capricorn, and mine is in Cancer. And so we were talking about how it's so interesting that not only are we working we live in entirely different cultures, right? We're across the world from each other. We practice entirely different kinds of astrology, at least, initially. And even in our charts, that Mercury function is opposing each other, but it works. And this is like a perfect example of how we talk about polarities are one continuum of energy. And so somehow we've managed, to find that continuum. And I think that's one reason why we haven't had to talk as much. Like, we've just sort of we've let it sort of flow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the opposition factor, Cancer, Capricorn, and Leo, Aquarius, kind of gives this perfect balance. The opposition from in each other's chart kind of gives a perfect balance to bring about the ideas and thoughts from one end, where I bring in the ideas and thoughts from the other end. So
Yeah.
it kind of helps in bridging both the charts. I think the oppositions were really helpful, except for we lost a little bit of time midway through October, November, and December, where we both had crazy times.
Yeah,
Um,
and we both were like not seriously ill, but we both were like, we both went through fatigue and a number of different like viruses or whatever,
yeah,
but we had a couple of months where we were
not
both
the
losing
coronavirus.
it. No, well, not that we know. Maybe we anyway, but no, we were, and do you remember we reached this point, you and I mean, and I mean, I'm quite a bit older than you are, but I know, so you and I both have strong Saturn in our charts. And I think part of this is like the Saturn pressure to like keep going, get it done. And
Yeah.
I know at one point when we both were like, and we haven't shared this, but you and I both have more than full-time jobs, right? Like, you
Yes.
know, we're in addition to writing this book and doing the other things that we're doing. So we work for other companies, meaning
Yeah.
in addition to what we do for ourselves. So we're workers. We love to work, but there's a point where you start to break yourself, you know, if you do too much. And so when we hit this point where we were so fatigued and sick and worn out, and we were worried about, because you had run this, as you do, you'd run an election for when the best time to release the book would be. And we were all excited about it. And we were worried we wouldn't be able to make it. And I think it was me, I said, we have to stop. I was like, we're writing a book about the moon. Like, what would the moon say right now if we were to not take care of ourselves, if we were not to, you know, do what it takes to heal or to get better? And I write about it in I think the intro part, and maybe in my acknowledgments at the beginning of the book, I talk about this a little bit. But for me, if I had not chosen to stop writing the book at that time and take a break, it wasn't just that I needed to heal and rest, but like I needed to be at a new place in my consciousness to keep writing the rest of the book. At the time, I didn't realize that. I just felt frustrated that I couldn't keep going. But when I took that time, you know, I started reading some different things. I spent some more time, you know, in my yoga practice, and, you know, more just being with myself and tuning into my own inner wisdom, as well as reading other people's. Like, for example, I really got into Stephen Forrest during this time. I was reading Stephen
Mm.
Forrest, and it never spoke to me that the way that it does now. And I've had his books for a long time. But I'm just saying, and I was also going through astrologically a big Neptune transit, and right now Saturn's opposing my sun. So I have all these things going on, but my point of all of this is that if I hadn't chilled out, if I hadn't taken a break, if I hadn't backed off, I wouldn't have had the space to create the rest of the parts of the book that we work on. I know that now. Like,
Okay.
and so it was perfect when we were working on, especially on the Neptune part, because one thing that Stephen Forrest talks about in his book about Neptune is he says, you know, when you're in a Neptune transit or Neptune time, you worry sometimes that, you know, that you don't know what's happening or you don't know what's coming or whatnot. And he says, the point is that you can't. With Neptune, you can't, because you can't know that until the shifting of consciousness expands into the next space. And that only comes with time and going through it. And so that's what I'm saying. Sometimes we need to allow the time. And I think for both of us in certain ways that needed to happen. But we were definitely worried about it.
Uh, I don't know, but um, no, from my point of view, I think it was. I never know when I need a break and stuff. So I always wait for someone to kind of tell me like that I need a break or something. So but I think I was constantly working, and not just for the book. I think we had kept the book was very silent for 2 months or something, especially the November and December. I'm sure it was completely silent, and we met in early 2020, and and I needed that personal connect, and personal connect in the sense the online Zoom connect, because it's been so long since we actually met and spoke with each other. So I really needed that connect to get things going, and since that particular meeting, I never turned back.
No, no.
And neither did you. So,
Mm-mm.
so that's the. I think for you, I think the break did the best thing for you to bring the best out of bring the best out of you to give it to the book. And from my point of view, I think that meeting that we had in early January triggered a lot of things in my mind. And since
Mm-hmm.
then, I never turned back. So, but for me, I had a huge shifts to make, because I also work with ancient astrology, and also evolutionary astrology is completely on the other zone. So I had to switch off my predictive work or the predictive mind and then switch on the psychological mind. Um, so it was not so easy for me, and it took so long for me to realize that something like this is happening. So I had to consciously stay in that zone, so that I used to keep all the Ben Dykes books away, and then I used to take up Dan Rudyard and Stephen Forrest stuff to kind of stay with the humanistic astrology zone. And I also told this to a few other people as well, that it's becoming very tricky for me to kind of manage. But at this point of time, it's almost like a cakewalk to me, because I got used to this for almost 3-4 months now. So I just plan my work in such a way that I can read Ben Dykes in the morning and read Dan Rudyard at night. So so that I can manage both predictive astrology and humanistic psychological astrology. So it's there is a lot of difference in various forms of astrology. So it was a bit challenging to kind of switch off the predictive mode and concentrate on the psychological mode, because I've always done a lot of predictive astrology, and have only read psychological astrology. So I started reading various charts, and especially the character analysis part. And also the uh, inner feelings of what a transit or a specific configuration is going to bring. Not that a transit is going to trigger a major event in life or something like that that becomes predictive, but what it triggers from a psychological or a mental health perspective. So that's something that I started looking upon. And it's not that I realized only before 2 or 3 months, but I think I realized long back. See, everyone knows the psychological quotient of how astrology works, but still the Saturn Mars opposition and the eclipse period in July 2019 taught me a lot of lessons in terms of how a transit can bring about a lot of psychological impact. So that was a uh, that was a huge realization period, because until then I had given a lot of importance only to predictive work. I still do, but I also equally respect and also, you know, have that much amount of significance in my work related to uh, psychological quotient as well.
Yeah, and I want to say from my side, I was raised in evolutionary astrology
Yeah.
and soul sign astrology with Adam Gainsbourg. But since you and I have been working together, one of the things that's been so great about it for me is that you will say things in a different way, or you will even use different words, and so
Mm.
and then I that makes me rethink all the things I think I know, and that has been a very valuable process. I will also say, I've been a supporter of the astrology podcast for a long time, Chris Brennan's podcast, but I more recently, I bought his book and I've started paying more attention to the ancient astrology, and that's
Woo!
in part through you, because the more and more we've worked together, the more and more, and I've always been someone who draws from whatever I can find, right? Like I'm very comfortable in taking a piece from here, a piece from there, but I realize that I actually haven't spent enough time with that with the more ancient, with the more classic, with the more traditional astrology, and that there's a lot that enriches my practice and my understanding of things. For example, like I have not been working with profections, but I was listening to Chris Brennan talk about that, and now I am, and I know, which house perfection I'm in right now, and it makes total sense, and I can look at that with my clients. So my point is that we all tend to go our little way, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's only through a really good conversation that you start to realize, okay, like, maybe there's something more here. So I just wanted to offer to you that I think that's for both of us. You've been moving more towards the psychological side, but then I'm also dipping back into the more classical side. And I think you and we've said how many times along the way that, there are many, many differences, like, and
Yeah.
our aim in the book was not to talk about the differences, really. It was more to talk about how we can meet sort of in the middle ground and then apply the idea of the phases, the planetary phases, apply it in whatever work and whatever way you want to use it. But that the moon, in some respects representing the heart, is the center or where we meet.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, uh,
One second.
yeah.
So I think we were saying, at least my whole point, if that was long-winded or confusing, was just that we've always tried to meet at the heart.
Yeah. And I don't think I've been exposed to a lot of psychological astrology work before working with you. So the only book that I read, not the only book, but I think the complete book that I read was Alan Oaken's Complete Astrology before working with you. So apart from that, it's all Chris Brennan, Ben Dykes, and
Yeah. But
all those.
you are a big fan of Dame Ruggiero. You and I both are big fans of Dame Ruggiero.
Yeah, I think especially Dan Ruggia's humanistic side gives me uh, a valuable perspective of doing astrology, even though Dan Ruggia did not agree with the fact that ancient astrology was also equally that's there, but still, I think his humanistic side is very, very important because I think he mentions it in the preface that it doesn't make any sense to practice astrology that was used by the ancients because the times have changed and people have changed. But that's not something that I agree with. But still, I think the humanistic idea of, the humanistic astrology by Dan Rudhyar, especially the astrology of personality, is a milestone or a cornerstone in the in modern psychological astrology realm. So I think that's one of the most important works that laid foundation to the fact that astrology again came back in the early 20th century. I think we mention it in some part of the book about this as well. So
Yeah. Well, yeah. And being an evolutionary astrologer, phases is a big part of what we work with, and of course, the 8 planetary phases are all based on the solar lunar phases, and this all goes back to Dame Rujar's. It truly is pioneering work in the book called the lunation cycle, right?
mm,
And so, our book builds on that, right? Huge credit to that.
yeah,
That work and that thinking and that concept and all of that has been created. And essentially, I think we just built on it and added sort of our voice to it. One thing about the book, we haven't talked very much about the book, but one thing is, so in my world, in my life, I work with a lot of people who only know a little bit about astrology, and then also ones that know a lot. And so one thing about this book the phases are a little bit more intermediate material, right? So,
Yeah.
but this book, each chapter is about the moon with another planet. So it also includes a lot of extended material just on each planet. It takes a really deep dive into the planet. So it's, it can open up new conversations on the basics, as well as then lead into, each of the phases the moon has with each of the planets. So I just wanted to mention that I feel like the book has something for beginners, and I feel like the book also has information. We've talked about the word conversation a lot because the whole book felt like a conversation.
Yeah.
The book is a conversation. We mean in putting the book out here in the world, what we want is to open a big conversation, so that everyone who's reading it is part of that conversation. The aim was never to give answers.
Yeah.
It was sort of to bring up questions that lead to more questions. That was the idea.
I mean, I think the entire point is not about what we are saying, but as you rightly mentioned, it's about what we are kindling in others. I mean, the reader's mind, or the reader's heart, or so it again. But just to give a more idea of, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows the faces who has been doing astrology, but still, um, uh, we have kind of applied the technique of the sun moon cycle to all the planets with respect to moon's movement from all those other 9 planets. So with 8 same phases given by Dan Rudyard. So it's not something that we claim it to be perfect, but I think it's something that you really would love exploring, because I'm sure once you read the Moon Mercury phase, you'll be hooked to the book, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult not to, because that's what we had once we wrote Moon Mercury. I think we could not just give up the idea. So and the more you work with phases of your own particular chart from each planet to the moon, I think you will be even more interested in exploring this idea. So yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is, there's if it's out there, I haven't found it. I haven't found books just on phases.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the lunation cycle, we have things on the sun moon phases, but I mean on more expanded kind of on just the phases themselves. And with this book, because the chapters in some respect, the format repeats, right? So like we talk about the moon Mercury, we talk about the moon, we talk about Mercury, we talk about their cycle together, we talk about each of the 8 phases that they have together in their cycle. We do the same for each planet. So by the time you get to the end, you've really learned the 8 phases.
Yeah.
I mean, you because the concepts are the same. They just apply to a new situation. And so especially for me with evolutionary astrology, it's a good reminder. Like it focused me on working with those phases so intimately that it's bringing a new level to my own awareness and to my own work, which I think is good for any of us, right? Like this is.
Yeah, I think not writing, but working on a book itself is a great new learning process, because that's when I really wanted to read Dan Rudyard. I really wanted to read Stephen Forrest. I don't know how many times I went back to Alan Oaken's Complete Astrology. So yeah, I mean many times. So it's very important to kind of know that we are also learning, and we learned a great deal through this book, and we hope to kind of kindle that particular interest of working with the phases with each particular planet and not just the sun. So and see how it how it brings value and meaning to your own life, and how you understand and discover yourself and see how you react and don't react under various situations, because you also don't have to react at some point of time. So
Yeah.
it was at least it was a learning experience to me, because I had to think deeply and had to see various actual real experiences of people, those who are born with those phases or configurations in their chart, and see what kind of mindset or approach they have towards that particular planetary signification point of view. And I had to work a bit more than what I do for predictive part, because this is not my natural stuff. People should not think that I'm a natural evolutionary or psychological astrologer. Uh, I don't want to, yeah, it's. But I'm happy that I've ventured into this particular uh, part of astrology, and I'm just more than thankful to you for that.
Oh, yeah, and I feel the same. I'm very thankful for you as well. This was not easy for me either. I think you and I both had the conversation, because for
I
some
know.
reason, but for some reason, Moon Mercury. It's not that it was easy, but like it came to us pretty quickly.
Yes.
And even Venus and Mars, like we're like, okay. And then I remember at one point, I don't know which one of us, but we were like, it's getting really hard. Like, do you know what I mean? Like we reached a point where it's just like I was like, oh,
I remember that.
So I know, at least for myself, it pushed me into territory that I hadn't been before with myself, and so there's this sort of this line of like you want to know what you're doing and to do it quote unquote right, but at the same time, a lot of this, especially with the moon, it's not really that way. It's more of a you kind of share what's in you, what you feel, what you see, and then you gotta see how or if it resonates. So I felt sometimes like I was working with like nothing. Like usually when I'm writing, and I mean, and I'm a writer. Like I write all day long for the Sage Goddess, a company I work for, and and I usually can write pretty fast. And there were points in this book, I got to tell you, where to get even like the beginning of a chapter done took me like I felt like I was just a turtle. I mean, I couldn't like get it, and then I started worrying about it, so I'd go back and check my sources, like am I doing it right, am I, and so it is definitely interesting how even the phases that we're talking about, the 8 phases, which just really are the cycle of life from the beginning to the completion of something, it was the same way in working on this book. We went through those phases. And I bet if we went back and looked at those times when we were really struggling, I bet those would fit with some of those phases that are more of a struggle, right?
Yeah.
Because of course the new phase is all exciting. You don't know what the work's really going to look like at the beginning.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I kind of underestimated this book to be a reasonably easier one, especially after completing the Mercury Moon phase, and then I was quickly cornered, not just too late, but as early as in Venus chapter. So, but for some reason, I think we finished Mars very quickly. And I mean, as good as how or what Mars signifies, the quickness. So, and I think we had a huge break before Jupiter. And Jupiter was okay, but I don't know. I had written an article on Saturn, and you said that Saturn would be probably easier for us to finish off. And Saturn is something that we read it where we had to erase an entire thing and had to redo the entire Saturn all over again. So, this book kind of proved our ideas and thoughts wrong at various junctures. So, but I think at every point of time there was a great deal of new learning, which is the most positive takeaway from this book. So,
and and then towards the end, as we were discussing Pluto,
Yeah.
the evolutionary astrologer whose work is based on Pluto, I suggested maybe we should just leave it out. Or maybe we should just write a small little bit about it. And at that point, afterwards, I realized how ridiculous for an evolutionary astrologer to leave Pluto out. But and it's funny because we talk about Pluto oftentimes being the bottom line, that and
Yeah.
it is the last chapter of the planets in the book, and we definitely had to work with that one quite a bit, at least to get what we wanted to share from it. But we yeah, there was something about Pluto. It's the further you get away, the further you get out in the solar system, the further this stuff is out there. It becomes in some ways harder to talk about bridging it with the moon, because the moon is so personal, so now, so ego, so identity, so and then so you're talking about something like Pluto that actually represents the eternal soul, or the soul's desire to evolve on a level. It becomes harder to come up with kind of tangible examples, and it gets harder to write in a very, I don't know the right word for this, like with Mercury and Mars, it's more straightforward.
Yeah.
And so as it got further out there, we were challenged to still keep an anchor, to keep an anchor with holding it together, but also to give ourselves the freedom to be a little bit out there. Because the truth is that, and this is true with Mercury as well, but we think we know a lot about this stuff. We barely know anything. The whole point is that we're discovering more. So I think we allowed more room for that. But it is interesting how, as it went on, it did get harder. It definitely got harder. And I think one thing with the phases in general, life is, we're always at different points in evolution. That's kind of what the phases are revealing, is where you are in the particular growth phase or period in whatever cycle you're in. And when you reach the end of writing a book, or you reach the end of anything, you're in what's called the balsamic phase, right? And part of balsamic phase is letting a lot of it go.
Sure.
And I think part of that's what happened towards the end of the book. We kind of had to decide what to let go, what to keep.
But finally, I'm just glad that we decided to keep.
We kept Pluto. Yeah, Pluto. I think people. Leslie Francis, she was very kind to do a testimonial for us for the book. And when I suggested that we might not include Pluto, she was very clear. She said she would be extremely disappointed if she were to buy that book and not have a chapter on Pluto. So yeah, no, we weren't ever really going to leave it out, but it does give you a little window into where we were with it. Pluto is a big thing to take on, and that whole concept of Pluto is a big thing to take on.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it was the most difficult chapters for me, and and especially towards the end, trying to meet the deadline, writing Pluto is really a big challenge.
Yeah, but as most things in life, if it's not a challenge, and if you don't have to work at it, it's just not worth as much. So in the end, I feel like I've grown so much, not just in my writing or in astrology, but just as a person, and that's, I think, the value of working with the moon. When you really work with the moon and you dig in with the moon in astrology, you are working with yourself as personally as you can.
Yeah.
And that happened for me in writing the book. And I hope that that's, it's an invitation to everybody to do a little bit more of that.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think at this point in time of our lives, right, with all the uncertainty and the challenges we're going through, just as humans today, that getting back to the heart of who we are, doing what we can to be the best version of ourselves, really looking at our own role, what we can do, what really is meaningful, what is valuable for us, that's how we really make a difference. And the moon always takes you right back to the heart of it. And I
Sure.
think that is the aim of the book, is to like get really personal with yourself, you know? And
Yeah.
sometimes it takes challenging circumstances for you to really get to that place, because otherwise it's too easy to ignore it, you know? But when shit hits the fan, so to speak, it gets personal, you know?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
I think both of us, part of our intention in recording this today and sharing this is that it was personal for us. This whole writing this book, this whole journey is personal. You know, we didn't just
Yeah.
write this at or to someone. We wrote this from a really personal place. And
Yes.
it's been a real gift, Ashwin, to share that with you.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just short of words at this point of time. So I think I'm equally grateful for this opportunity to co-create with you and be. I mean, at least living during this time, and really grateful for whatever has happened over the past 2 years since we became friends, and I'm just hoping for many things to come in near future. So, and the most important thing about the book is where I'm sure astrological community is very receptive and wonderful today than it was before. At least, I mean, I may be wrong, but still, hearing so many people talk, I think there was a lot of divisiveness in the community. Um, Sometimes during the 60s and 70s or 80s, in I'm not very sure about it. I may be wrong, but still, today the community is very open, despite the fact that there is a lot of other forms of astrology as well. There is revival of ancient astrology and evolutionary astrology, modern psychological astrology, Vedic astrology. You know, I mean, every place has their own uh, cultural or traditional background of divination. So I think it was wonderful to bring out something like this. Uh, with like both of us come from entirely different cultural and cosmological backgrounds, but we respect each other. Um, and I work with the sidereal zodiac mainly, and you work with the tropical zodiac. You use porphyry houses. I use whole sign houses. Uh, Astrology is inherently predictive from my point of view. Astrology is not inherently predictive, and there is a lot of other important things, significant things that are valuable from your point of view, which I totally agree with. So, I mean, these differences kind of bring in the the need to find a neutral ground to stay and work together, and I'm really happy to put forth along with you, and to even work alongside you. It was a real honor, and I'm just thankful to a lot of things, and thankful to a lot of people as well. So this might not have happened without a lot of people. I think we mentioned a few people, including the from the start, and and I think we should mention about Bob Mulligan.
Yeah.
So Bob Mulligan also, I think the three of us met in US. I'm not sure if you met Bob before, but I remember you saying that I was sitting beside you, and you just called me and said, Do you see that guy? He's Bob Mulligan. He's been doing astrology 10 or 15 years before I was born, and probably 25 years before you were born. So, which basically takes back to 1971 and 72. And I immediately started seeing Bob Mulligan as one of the tallest figures of the astrological community, and I'm very grateful to you for introducing me to him, because I share a very interesting and wonderful bonding with him today, and he's almost like a father figure to me, who gives me a lot of food for thought. So, yeah, and yeah, just that's it. I just wanted to talk about him.
Yeah, and also we had three amazing people read our book way before it's done, like unedited even, and give us some beautiful testimonials that we'll be including, right? And that's Leslie Francis, Adam Gainsbourg, and Anthony Lewis.
Anthony Lewis, yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about Leslie and Adam Gainsbourg, about their significance in your astrological career? A word or two?
Yeah, Leslie and I have, Leslie is, she's the author of the Llewellyn's Sun Sign books, I think for the last 2019, 2020, maybe before that. But she and I have become friends in the astrological community. And so, and she and I are collaborators. So she has been definitely an influence on me and a big supporter of me. So just huge thank you to her. Adam Gainsbourg. So Laura Nalbandian was my first formal astrology teacher. And I went through her evolutionary astrology program, a 3-year in-person program, and I've continued, workshops, and she's continued to be a mentor and a very dear friend of mine. So she learned directly from Jeffrey Wolf Green, the founder of evolutionary astrology. So I was very fortunate in that time to be so in with the people who were there when it started, so yeah. And in person, because life has shifted to much more virtual now, but I was in person every week, a class with her for all that time. And then I also went through Adam Gainsbourg's soul sign astrology program, and he has been a tremendous influence and mentor and supporter for me. I also spent years doing his open human heart work with him, which is a whole separate piece. You can go to Soul Sign Astrology. You can go to Soul Sign website if you want to learn more about Adam Gainsbourg, but it was not just astrology that I've worked with him through. And those individuals, both Laura and Adam, were so influential in shaping not just my practice of astrology, but really my becoming as a human. So yeah, I could go on for a long time, but that's that's just huge thank you from me to both of them.
Okay. I think Anthony Lewis is the other person who wrote the review, and I didn't realize how huge a figure Anthony Lewis was in the community, because he had translated the Spanish version of Maurine's work, who was a 17th century French astrologer. So, and Anthony he has been doing astrology since long time, and he's completely familiar with various forms of astrology, modern psychological and ancient astrology. He's an author of multiple books on astrology. Like he has written books on horary astrology, and he has written books on I think one book on predicting with solar revolutions or solar returns. He has written multiple books on tarot, and I was just fortunate to meet him, and he was generous enough and kind enough to work with me. And I've done so many videos with Anthony Lewis on astrology, on various topics of astrology. And he's someone who has watched me very closely in what I do, which is precisely why I wanted to have a review from him, because as you said, the people that Leslie Francis and Adam Gainsbourg knew about your work and knew who you were very much. So I think it was important for us to have that personal connect. The particular person who is writing a review needs to know about our own work. So I think that connect with our work was very important, and Anthony has always been encouraging and supportive of my work. And also I've learned so much from him. Each and every video that I do with him was almost like a new lecture or new form of education. So I'm just extremely thankful to Anthony. And it's not that I did not have a formal teacher in astrology, so it comes in my family, and there is a lineage. So I kind of picked up here and there, and my grandfather used to guide me and he used to teach me, but it was not a regular affair. So, but I think whenever I was, it's very difficult for someone to from in India. I mean, someone from India to kind of take a course in US or with a person in USA, because of the dollar rupee conversion. So it's completely insane for me. So I had to rely upon books, and I think I'm grateful for so many authors, wonderful authors of ancient astrology and also modern astrology, and Anthony Lewis, who kind of um, who always keeps telling me things tirelessly, because I used to ask him review my articles whenever I want to publish them, and he used to do it each and every time, and he used to give me suggestions or feedback on how to improve specific things or something like that. So it's always amazing to have someone like Anthony Lewis review our book, and his review would be one of the most honest reviews. And I mean, every review is honest, but still, I'm talking from those who are reading when the book is out. So Anthony Lewis' review is going to be uh, one of the things that will at least give a great idea about the book. So Adam Gainsbourg and Leslie Francis, all the three reviews have only spoken about what the book had to offer, and the great thing is we chose three reviews, and all the three reviews only talk about the books, and just perfectly about the books, which is one of the most important things, so that we don't have to talk about it much.
Yeah. Yes, we're thankful. They wrote those better than we probably could have. So we're
I really thought, because especially three, I mean, to have all the three reviews in same line is very difficult. So I think everything is falling in place, and I don't know if we missed something to talk.
No, we should just tell them where they can well, you will be where they can find it when it's out.
I see. We are self-publishing the book. I don't think it's too early to mention the platform through whom we are actually self-publishing. So we don't want to talk about that, but it will be available through your website, taraal.com, at this point of time. So you can directly order copies from the website, and also my website, which is the abverdict.com, and it will be there on Amazon as well.
Eventually it will all be there.
I mean, we're not sure whether it will be on Amazon just after the release, but at some point of time, I'm sure it's going to be there on Amazon, and people who are living in various regions can make use of their own regional Amazon portals. So it kind of gives a reduced shipping or no shipping at all. So make use of your Amazon once it's ready on Amazon. But until then, I think the copies have to be ordered from personal websites. So
but the best thing too is that if you can follow either of us on Facebook, because we'll both be posting as that comes with all that information. So
I'll give the links for everything in the description page of this video, and we look forward to hearing a lot of reviews and feedback, and hopefully we can get ready with our next work. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.